Will, how are you this morning, man?
I'm great. It is a day that we finally get sunshine in the capital city, so I'm good.
It's a day that we've had sunshine here in Aiken for the last couple of days, but it has been still and miserably hot, which I know that you guys in Columbia don't know anything about, right?
Oh, well, I mean, how many different things have people said about Columbia? The armpit of the South, the screen door to hell. We've seen all sorts of stuff about Columbia, but yeah, I mean that's what we signed up for, being South Carolina folk, right?
Before we jump into this, I'll tell one quick story. When I was still living in Columbia, um, I was working at Aerotech, and we were required to wear a suit and tie every single day, no matter what, especially for client meetings. And I had a client building. I had about 20, 25 laborers at Fort Jackson building, helping build the new post office out there. And so I decided it was brutal hot August, and I was going to go take them some lemonade. Being the brilliant mind that I am, I decided to pick a black suit that day. And it's 107 degrees outside. I get to Fort Jackson, they're doing road construction. So I had to park a mile away and walk from my car to the job site alongside the road that they were paving. So 107 degrees outside, probably another 30 degrees next to all that black tar being poured. I get to the job site. The 2 bags of ice I had on my shoulders had melted, and I'm just soaking wet, which, to be honest, it felt good. And probably a good thing that I did have that, because I would have had a heat stroke.
Yeah.
But that will always be my most vivid Columbia memory. And I got to the job site, and the superintendent looked at me and he goes, "You dumbass."
Yeah, that was not one of your finer moments by any stretch.
Nope. So, Will, tell us about you and the King Group.
So the King Group is it's a real estate team that is comprised of myself, my wife, and our two administrative assistants. And so we are based here in Columbia. And as a husband and wife team, I typically handle a lot of our listings, and my wife handles a lot of our buyers. It is a really a holistic approach. I mean, let's be honest. Realtors are, if we're honest, a dime a dozen. And really, any realtor can find you a house on the multiple listing service. That's easy. But what we do is that we really believe that this is about people and their stories, and not just properties. It's about why you have to make a move. And it's about us helping you accomplish your goals. And sometimes that is finding you a house that may be on the MLS, but sometimes it's us knocking on doors and finding the perfect house that you want, that not everybody else is going to find for you.
So it's not always about finding a house that's somebody's actively selling, but going and finding the fit for the buyer and finding interest, or seeing if the potential seller is interested in selling.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I always think back to this example. We had an older couple that they have one daughter. Their one daughter lives in Columbia, and she was pregnant with their first grandchild. And so they were living in Virginia at the time. And obviously, with a grandchild, many times our parents like grandchildren a lot more than they ever liked us. They wanted to get here as quickly as they could for that first grandchild. And they knew the neighborhood they wanted to be in, but Franklin, there was nothing for sale in there.
Wow.
Nothing that matched what they wanted. And so through our connections, we found somebody that was willing to sell, that was not on market, and we put those two parties together and got them the house that they wanted.
I love it. That's awesome. And you're absolutely right about the grandparents. I asked my mom one day, I said, "Mom, when did I become no longer your favorite person on earth?" And she goes, "In September of 2016, when Benjamin was born."
Yeah.
That's my nephew. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's pretty much, I mean, the family's always like, "Hey, we want to see the kids." And then there's a pause. And you too, of course.
Yeah.
No, I'm not part of that, but that's fine.
So what's it like working with your wife?
I wasn't sure what it would be like getting into it. And to her credit, she probably wasn't either. It's actually been incredibly refreshing. Maybe that's the word to use, because we both have different strengths. And she comes from a background in nursing and medical. And so She is very empathetic and she's great with buyers because she takes plenty of time with them. She goes on their time schedule and really nurtures them through that process, especially first time home buyers. As a guy, I'm very much task oriented, driven. So the listing side has been, home for me, understanding this is, we got to do A, B, C, D in order to get everything ready on a listing. So it's been good because we have different strengths and we play to those.
So her nursing background, that consultative approach with patients, has translated well to working with buyers. That makes perfect sense.
Without a doubt.
Now, I thought you had an interesting transition to real estate. Maybe I should be talking to her about her transition to real estate.
Yeah. Well, if you had told me 10 years ago, Franklin, Will, you're going to be in a 100% commission job, I would have been like, you're crazy. Don't sign me up for that. Oh, and by the way, Will, your wife's going to be in it with you, 100% commission job. I would have absolutely had you committed because that's not the path that I thought we would end up on. But it's here we're here.
So let's go back 10 years ago, right? 2011, height of the Spurrier era.
Yeah.
You're on the radio. You're not in real estate. You're on the radio. How did you get into radio?
So radio really was when I started in South Carolina. I initially was like a computer science major, but didn't really have a desire for that. And so I always loved television, always loved radio, music, listening to what were cassette tapes and recording my favorite songs. And so when I got to South Carolina, I went over to B106.7 and I met Brent Johnson. And I basically told them then, I said, I'll do anything you want me to do. I'll sweep the floors or whatever y'all need. I just want to be involved in the business. And so they had me come in once or twice a week and record some commercials. Not even my voice. I mean, just like this tape to this tape. And I did that for a while. And then I ended up, when I graduated from South Carolina with a degree in broadcast journalism, they brought me on full time. That was before 107.5 The Game ever started. And I was doing a lot of music stuff and promotions and pounding the pavement on the weekends with promotions and things like that. And then 107.5 The Game came along and it opened up an opportunity for me to do sports talk. And so I did that for a while, obviously, and then moved up in programming where, I had a hand in helping program the station.
Interesting. I know you guys, because you had the lunch show, right, with Brent?
Yeah, Brent and George and I started the lunch show. Prior to that, if you remember, there was an evening show.
Yeah.
There was a night show from 7 to 10 called The Post Game, and that was after Heath Klein. And I did that for a while as well.
I'd forgotten about that. I was looking at they announced the broadcasters for the first couple games this year, and one of the names rung a bell, Brian Custer, and I feel wasn't he involved on 107.5 at one point?
He was, and so the very first day, that afternoon show from 4 to 7 was Mike Morgan and Brian Custer.
That's what it was. Okay, all right. Man, God, this is taking me too far back. I always listen to back before the resume writing playlist that I do is actually music. My afternoon playlist was always 107.5, starting with you and Brent at lunch, and then on Wednesdays Tuesday or Wednesday was the Spurrier press conference, and then you had Jay in the afternoon, and then Heath to close the day out. And I will never forget, and you probably don't remember this, but when Darren Horn got fired, the hot topic was Greg Marshall to Carolina. And I remember you being on the radio and you were so against us hiring him. And I actually called in and debated with you for like 2-3 minutes on why we should. And now looking back in hindsight, you were 100% right.
It's interesting because there are a lot of times that your opinions are formulated on the air from things that you may have been told, but told privately. You can't attribute this to anybody.
Right.
And so it's not just that you go on the air and you just spout off something random. Now, there are certainly people that do that. There's certainly people that will go on and just They want to have that shock jock opportunity, and just throw something out there. Skip Bayless is a great example. I don't think Skip Bayless believes half the things he says.
Yeah.
He's just looking for a reaction. But I never was that way. I wanted, if I was going to formulate an opinion and put it out there, it was something that I truly believed or knew.
So when you left radio, you went into public relations. How was that transition?
It was an opportunity for me, I think, really to broaden my skill set. And that was so important, because you don't ever want to get pigeonholed in your career. We hear about actors all the time that feel like they got pigeonholed. The most famous one is probably somebody like Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies. They never could find, and that's a dated reference, but they never could find a role for him where they didn't see him as that. And so I left radio, and I transitioned that into doing some public relations for a local auto dealership. And it was a great experience, great family-owned business. About a year and a half in, they changed up the game on me a little bit. And I think that's another important thing, is that you always have to roll with the punches.
The transition from media to communications is one of the most common one I see with my media.
It is.
Going from communications to management, business development to real estate is not. So what got you considering real estate?
So I mentioned they changed up the game on me at the dealership. I ended up running I ended up running an insurance agency for them, which I never thought I would be in insurance. So I ran that for a little while, and then it just really wasn't working out from a business standpoint. And I told my bosses, Franklin, I basically taught myself out of a job. I said, this is not going to be a successful business for you. You need to sell it.
Yeah.
And so they did. And, they weren't really sure what to do with me at that point. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wasn't super happy. And so my wife and I were sitting on the couch, and she said, "You've talked about doing real estate before. Is now the time?" And Franklin, at the time, she was in a full-time job doing nurse practitioner work. And so I had a bit of a net there that I could go, you know what, I think this is it. And so I decided to go ahead and get licensed and start my real estate career. And honestly, it has been a tremendously beneficial decision.
So how did you get hooked up with Keller Williams?
So once you get done with your licensing process and you get that test taken, the state of South Carolina requires that you go ahead and you hang your license with the brokerage. You can't work for yourself